This episode is brought to you by the supporters of 40 Watt Podcast over on Patreon. Go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, where for as little as $3 per month, you can help support the podcast and get every episode ad-free. For $5 a month, you'll get every episode ad-free, as well as a bonus episode every week. I can't overstate how thankful I am for the support of my patrons, and hope you'll consider joining the team and helping keep this show on the road. Hey all, welcome to this week's episode. I'm very excited to get into this conversation I had with Alex from Coppersound Effects. And we're going to get right into it, but got a couple things here at the top of the show that we're going to cover before we get started. First of all, I need to thank my latest Patreon supporters. Patreon helps keep this show going. You've already heard possibly a thing at the top of the show to hear why it's so important, but I can't say enough how much I appreciate all of the folks who are willing to put their hard-earned money into this podcast every week. As I pull up the names to thank them, if you would like to support this show, if you want to help keep this whole thing going, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/40watt podcast. And for as little as $5 a month, actually for as little as $3 a month, you can help keep the show going and get it ad-free. But if you want the extra content that I put out every episode, you're going to need to subscribe to our $5 level. And thanking the newest supporters, thank you, Dan S. and Brock Taylor, for becoming members of the medium wattage $5 a month Patreon support level. I appreciate you so much. Additionally, support for this podcast comes from sponsors. Sponsor this season has been Barry from Grez Guitars. Go over to grezguitars.com. Check out the really awesome stuff that Barry is putting out. Be sure to go over to Instagram. You can see some of the new things that Barry is taking to Fretboard Summit that's happening next week as this episode airs, including his brand new Grand Tour model, which is extremely cool. This is the guitar I've been hinting at that I've been working with Barry on. If you know me at all, you'll see some of the similarities to things I love immediately, and I can't wait to play it next week at Fretboard Summit. I'm so excited about this guitar. So go check him out. Find him on Instagram. All the links are down below. And lastly, before we get rolling, I do have some affiliate links. You can find them down in the description below. I have affiliate links for reverb.com. I've got affiliate links and a discount code for tour gear design, patch cables, for True Fire. If you want to get some lessons, go click that link down below. Use 40 watt, and that's going to get you 40% off. There's a lot of really great ways you can help keep the show going. I have a String Joy affiliate link down there below. I don't talk about them every episode because I don't want you to feel like I'm selling things to you every week, even though I sort of am. But if you want to help support the show and you want to get some cool stuff while you're at it, you're going to buy gear anyway. You may as well click the links below. Anyway, on with the show. Forty Watters, welcome to another episode 40 Watt Podcast. My name is Philip. I'm your host. Very excited to be with you again for another week. Hey, we got 2 in a row. That means summer is winding down for me. It means I actually have a little time to podcast, and it is great. You've already listened to the spiel and all the stuff at the top of the episode, so it's all good. We're going to move right into this conversation. This week, I have coming back again because we have a lot of things we want to talk about. Alex from Coppersound. How are you, sir?
I am so good. I am stoked to be here. I was happy to have you when you were in town with the Guitar Dads. And
yeah,
we didn't get enough chance to talk, so here we are. Let's do it.
Yeah, we really didn't. And actually, I'm going to be back in that area again in September. So
I heard.
Yeah, so I'm going to be back up there because listeners, y'all know in my day job, I work as a librarian, and I'm on some boards from national organizations. We have a conference in Massachusetts, and I'm going to take a few days afterwards, go over from Springfield. I'm going to go over to Boston again. So spend a couple of days there, and I think I need to check. I need to buy tickets. I think we're going to go try to see Rival Sons while we're up there. They're in the area on tour, and I never get to see bands like that down here in this musical desert of Mississippi. I know that is wild to call Mississippi a musical desert, considering how much music has come out of Mississippi, but that's the problem. It all leaves Mississippi and then doesn't come back. I have to drive long distances to get to good concerts. So I'm really excited to come back. So we're gonna have to do pizza. We're gonna have to do it while we're up there.
Yes, that'd be lovely. Join us for one, because those guys come every now and then, and I take them to a new bar pizza. So we'd love to have you as a guest.
Yeah, we should definitely do that, and then we can do like a drunken Patreon episode after pizza and a lot of beer, or I don't know. I guess beer is a Boston thing, and then Sam Adams is there. I'm sure y'all are tired of everybody bringing up Sam Adams.
I think Harpoon has a place up here in the
Ooh.
seaport too.
Yeah, that could be good. So we got to talking, and we've been meaning to get together, and we have a few things to talk about this week. You've been doing some writing, you've been doing some stuff business wise. Originally, we were just gonna chat and be chill, but you've got some things going on that have been super exciting. And literally by happenstance, I have them next to my desk because we got them out of the kitchen. My wife was very happy to get them off the counter because that's where I was working on things. But you guys have been busy. So what you been busy doing?
I guess it's been a wave of, or flood, if you will, of DIY. We actually did, that's a callback, because we actually did get flooded one day.
Oh,
it was the day I did an episode with the Guitar Dads. But yeah, we've been getting the metaphoric flood too of orders, which has been really good because, as you and I had spoke, it felt a little bit slower going into the summer in our industry because we're a niche of like a overall small industry. But yeah, the whole DIY aspect has just been the thing that just has been, as they say, paying the bills, and it's been coming. It feels like a second but different version of like when Triple Graph launched in 2020. It was just like, we don't know, like we need more space, we don't know where to put stuff, and we're just running around like crazy because of all the orders, everything they do with a small shop with only a few people. It's felt like that. It's always interesting to actually have, like, it doesn't feel like a pitch or something to be like, yeah, we can't keep it on the shelf type of thing. Right. It's like literally like, we're actually having trouble keeping it on the shelf, which is, hey, good problems to have. And, I don't want to look the gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah. And with the DIY stuff, which I have a little bit here. I ordered some from y'all. Actually, we talked about it while I was up there that I wanted to order it, but I put it off because y'all were so swamped with orders that keeping the stuff in stock was sort of a problem. But this is the first one I did for you viewers over on YouTube. You can see this one's the first one I did that I've still not taken apart. This is the 2-knob fuzz. And I don't want to take it apart because I'm real proud of having done it and actually gotten it right. The instructions were really, really helpful that come with it to put these kits together. And there's a few other companies doing similar things out there. Not to say y'all are the only one doing it, but y'all do such a great job of just making it so simple to get started and understand what's going on. Like I had heard, because I'm friends with pedal builders, I'd heard so many people talk about power filtering, right? It wasn't until I started putting this together and in your instructions, it explained what the power filtering is. I was like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, and it's pretty rudimentary. It's not necessarily what we would do in ours, or a more high-end thing, or high current regulation, all that type of stuff that I won't get into, because that's not really the idea of it. It's more, give somebody approachable. I think we were trying to live off the idea of like, tell them what, but not too much why.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to get deep into like the physics of stuff and like all the philosophies of it and whatnot. So like, give them the right amount, they can go on their journey. People that are getting into it like yourself can understand it, they can build it, have fun, it's approachable, it's music Legos. And the build kit, like you had mentioned, that's been like the one unanimous thing that everybody's like, these are really great. It really helps. The fact that like we've done hundreds and hundreds of these kits, and like very rarely do we get an email, and usually it's like somebody missed a wire or a cable, or you know what I mean.
I definitely
something
missed
simple.
a couple of those when I first built that fuzz. Not gonna lie, I definitely missed a couple of them. It's really, it's also I'm aging, and as much as I hate to admit it, because I had great vision for most of my life, my eyesight's not as great as it used to be. I was watching, I was on Instagram the other day, I guess yesterday probably, and I saw that pedal show. Mick had put up a reel or something, right? And he was talking about how he was working on, he was rewiring his vintage 345. But in the meantime, he was also working on a few problematic pieces around the TPS studio space, and one was a reverb tank that he was working on. And he had like the old school like jeweler's eyeglasses that yes, those. And I'm like, I need to order a pair of those because sometimes I can't see these tiny little holes anymore, and I have to get real close to them because I'm nearsighted, so close is fine for me. But it's like once you're more than a foot and a half away, it starts to get a little blurry because of an astigmatism, because nature hates me. But it's really easy to miss. But it was I was able to track it down. I was able to follow the circuit, do it again in my head, and find what the error was, to the point that and y'all, if this is going to sound like a pitch, it's because it is, and I don't mind. I'm going to pitch more than Alex is going to. I enjoyed doing that kit so much that I ordered a bigger breadboard, and I also ordered literally every other circuit that you make. I was like, no, give them all to me. Send me all these. I want to build every one of these because it's really fun. And like you said, you don't want to give, like, it's not what you would have done in like a full production pedal necessarily, because one, you don't expect me to put this in a enclosure. Like, that's not how that works.
Not yet.
Not yet. But this is I love the foreshadowing. Well, we're going to talk about that later, because that's another thing that I want to do. I want to do a series of build videos where I, as a Neanderthal Luddite, do these kinds of things and just record the process. But I'm going to do one with the breadboard and the circuits, and then I'm going to do I want to find some kits to build and just build and talk about those, and then like a finale, like a 3-part series of videos. I'm going to build an amp. I want to build like a little Tweed Princeton, and just something simple, and talk about doing it for the first time as someone who has, like, literally the extent of my knowledge is I listen to Fretboard Journals, The Truth About Vintage Amps, and I know how to use a soldering iron. That's the extent of my knowledge, right? So
yeah, I love that idea. Knowing you and the podcast and your experience, I can totally agree with you when you say you are a Neanderthal.
yeah, totally. See, this. It's fine. I know who I am. I'm really smart in some things, and I'm okay saying that. But there are some things that I am an idiot in. I told someone the other day, no, today, I have these moments where I'm a complete idiot. And we were talking about offshoots of brands where, like, someone works for a popular brand and then leaves and then starts doing their own thing. And then it's maybe a little too much like the brand they left. You know what? And it's like, because somebody was like, no, spread your wings, do your thing. I'm like, it's spread your wings, but like, there's something to be said for not just going and doing the same thing, just under a different label. And an example I used was Sir Guitars. And I was like, they don't really look that much like Fenders to me. And then, because my brain had completely ignored the fact that the Sir Classic line exists. Like, because the Sir Classic lines are like 1-to-1 Strats and Telecasters, right? I completely ignored those existed. I was thinking more like they're like hot rodded super Strats and stuff like that. So that's how my brain works, and has very dumb moments where I just don't think about things. But I want to do that video. I want to build all of these, and I'm going to. That's in my plan. And then I also have a bunch of extra components that I'm going to try to do creative new stuff and break things. So that's my plan.
Love it.
So do you see a lot of so you're saying you don't get too much of people coming back and, this didn't work or this didn't. So how rewarding does that feel? You're actually putting things out there. People are building these things. Have you had somebody said, I bought your kit, I got into it, then I designed my first pedal, and you had any of those stories yet?
There's actually, in Worcester last year, we did a small expo with a company. I want to get the full thing right.
Uh-huh.
Let me just look this up.
Sure.
Um, just because we did a show in Worcester, and I'm trying to remember the full name. Essentially, this person started their company because of the DIY, because of the tools that we made for it, like the
Oh, that's
breadboarding and
cool.
stuff. Yeah. So that was really cool. Photo Booth Sound Design
Oh.
is the name of the company. So Photo Booth Sound Design they do a lot of stuff with like watercolor. I don't know if he does like dipping or I can't remember the exact process, but it's very like it's got like watercolor vibes to it. You can find all of his stuff on Reverb.
Yeah.
But it was so cool that we were next to him, and it was like essentially we started this because your DIY stuff, like the kits and the breadboards and stuff, and it was just very like surreal to see everything come around. We joke in the shop, we're like, I wonder if in 5 years we're gonna see a wave of builders because of these.
Yeah. So I went over to their Instagram. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like his name is John.
Yes, John.
And he like some of the Instagram photos are him breadboarding on the DIY board and just how he's
Mm-hmm.
building circuits and doing cool stuff. And
modding them, and I think he got if he didn't already got into like circuit board design and stuff, which is a testament in its own regard, because it's such a tough thing. It's like most things, it's more approachable to do on your own nowadays than it ever
yeah.
has been. But just the knowledge and the philosophies and the practices that come with circuit board design is a bit intimidating, but yeah, the stuff looks so cool, and it's really cool to share a space with somebody that was creative because of our thing.
Yeah.
And just going back to the whole like the build guides, we poured a lot of time into those to really get everything, because the more front end work we did, the less we're working on the back end.
Yeah.
It's showing. There's very little people that come through that have a problem. If they do, they send me a picture and I go, hey, you flipped these two things, or hey, you forgot this ground wire or something like that, which is really great. Then they usually come back like you and they're like, hey, I want to do the next one.
Yeah.
So it's been really great to see. And we, especially since the JHS boom, like I had mentioned to you, it was going before that, and now
Yeah.
Josh is doing series and people tune in each week. It's like a class. There's like 300 people in the class every episode, which is really cool and very encouraging.
Yeah, and the JHS effect is undeniable in this industry at this point. If Josh gets into something, he gets in front of a lot of eyes too, which is always helpful. Especially when it's something that's actually good. Like if you don't have something good, you probably don't want Josh to point it out, because it's not good for you. But these kinds of things are really great. I really appreciate that. But I'm gonna pull this one and I'm gonna try to remember where it goes, because I want to put it up for the YouTube viewers to see. One of the best things that comes in this kit, as someone who has tried to do breadboarding before on traditional breadboards, and this is so silly and so stupid, but it's these potentiometers that just sit on the board, no wires running to a crazy, I don't have I see some pedal builders and it works for them. That's fine. But they'll have like these crazy pots dangling off the board all over the place from trying to get them in the circuit. And then this one's just right here. It just fits back in. It's super easy. I think I put it back in the right spot. I'll find out when I try to plug it in later. It's really well thought out. You can tell you guys put a lot of effort and a lot of real deep thought into how this is going to look and how it's going to function and in the circuits. I like the steps that y'all you didn't try to do too little each step. Like that really frustrates me sometimes when every single wire is its own step. And y'all didn't do that, but you didn't overly do it. It's not like I bought Amazon furniture that just does one big diagram of how everything goes together and says good luck.
Yeah.
I put one of those together yesterday. But yeah, I think it's really smart. It's really nifty. And I'm glad it's going well because I had been looking for something like this. There was a company that made something similar before, and then they vanished from the market. And luckily, y'all have filled that space, and a few other people. I don't want to act like y'all are the only company doing this. There's a couple other that have sort of picked it up too, but I I know you, and I like y'all's approach, so I don't know those other people.
Well, obviously, like build your own clone and like pedal PCB and all these places have existed for making pedals, but nobody existed for like breadboarding them and giving the education and understanding and then modding and encouraging the. You can't get to the product without going to this step,
Yeah.
for the most part. So we just want to make it approachable, the right amount of steps. You're not printing out 200 pages, and it's just very approachable is the vibe, and very picture friendly because as you saw in our build guides, it's a description of what you're doing
Uh-huh.
and a 3D rendering of the parts you're going to use.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the schematic, which is its own language, honestly, and you don't even have to know it.
Yeah.
Because under it is a DSLR high-res pic of the actual breadboard that I did for each step. So if you just follow along with the picture like Legos, that's all you have to do. Ideally, you'll see the schematic and the breadboard simultaneously, and then each step it can start to click more and more and more.
Yeah.
It's repetition, just like anything in like education too.
Yeah, and I like that y'all provide various colors of wires, so you're not just using one color of wire and getting confused. What is that going to? You can color code it, and if you don't like the color coding y'all use, you can do it your own way. If you think power instead of red and black needs to be green and yellow, do it if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So y'all been building the crap out of these. Y'all have been like really putting a lot of these together. How's everything else? How's the pedals and other stuff in general?
We've seen, I think, a bit, as mentioned before, like it felt like we were a bit of like a decline for like a lot of stuff, whether it's economy, the nature of this year with a voting cycle, just in general, or summertime. It's people a lot of times are waiting for end of the year holidays. We've seen it pick up a little bit because of the DIY. People naturally get introduced to us through the show,
Right.
Through JHS, and again, we've got some stuff like one other thing to hit on the JHS that really helps is yes, the awareness is crazy there, right? But there's two other big factors I say, and it's really a 3-factor element. The awareness with the Josh stuff, that's the first one. The second one is our stuff is priced really well for what it is. And the third one is it's something that essentially does not exist. So you hit so many things right there.
Yeah.
Big awareness, cost friendly, something that doesn't exist. You could even get 2 of those and you'd be good to go. But that one has 3, which is cool,
Yeah,
exactly. It's something I mentioned when Triple Graph came out. It's octave that's digital. There's only like a half dozen people in the world that do it. It's unique because of the Morse code keys on it, and it's with an artist that's almost like essentially a household name that transcends generations. Like that's a crazy trifecta to have right there.
Yeah.
And
kidding.
DIY is kind of like it, which is why it feels like another coming of that. But it has helped. Like we'll see more stuff go off the shelf because of that, because people are finding out about us. But people also reorder DIY because it's very like once you do this, it opens up worlds,
Yeah.
And we just actually, one last thing on the JHS thing, we just did a kit with them. I don't know if you saw that, Philip, but we did a breadboard kit. So Josh had been doing like a specific circuit and working on it for like 6 or 7 episodes, and finally got to this is my ultimate this style circuit, right? It's an ultimate like LPB1, the classic EHX one, right? So he designed his one with like 2 different stages actually, biasing trim pots, actual germanium diodes that we have from Ukraine here, which is really cool. And we made a kit where you can get the bag or you can get the full breadboard kit experience. And it's literally based off Josh's hand-drawn thing that he does for the episode. Minor tweaks, but the original schematics at the end. And we just offered it as a kit. There was a day we came in, Josh did a video on like a Thursday, right? And he's like, here's the ultimate kit or whatnot. And he's mentioning at the end, he's like, I think Coppersound wanted to do something with this. I know they're busy, blah, blah, blah. And Jordan and I were like, I guess we have to do this. So Friday I came in and I breadboarded, actually, over here. This one's actually pretty colorful, which is fun.
Yeah.
So I breadboarded this. So this is the JHS LPB1 boosted driver fuzz is what he calls it. Just kind of something like ridiculous and fun. So this one we just did, and people can get it with just the bag of components or the full kit. And I did this like in 2 hours. Jordan got pictures. We just banged that kit out, and all of a sudden, like the next day, it was pretty much ready to go. Sent it out to dealers. We got like maybe 100 orders or so of that, and it was really fun on top of everything. Just the reception's been so great, and we're super grateful for that.
Yeah, I love the education aspect of it. It's just getting to know more and more, because so something that gets talked about on the aforementioned Truth About Vintage Amps, but also just in general. Now that's very amp specific, but there's not. I'm trying to decide how I want to say this and not get the blowback from all of you listeners who might come back at me, but there doesn't seem to be people going into electronics specifically for guitar electronics, amps for sure, but just in general, to be making this stuff. And so it's great to have an approachable education tool for hobbyists who want to start getting into it. And some of them are inevitably going to turn into people doing this for a living, like photo booth sound design. There's people who are going to sort of say, oh, I want to give this a shot. I have no background in electronics at all. I have like a rudimentary understanding of what I'm doing. And then they do this and they build a few, they start to get comfortable. Then they're like, oh, I bet I could design a circuit. And then they do. And, that percent is going to be what drives this industry forward into more and more fun things happening, in the same way that I really hope things like there's a big uptick in like amp repair YouTube folks doing, and I'm really hoping that that's going to inspire like a new generation of amp repair and tech people, because as we talked about, I know that so much of this industry has gone digital or, ampless. But there's still a lot of amps being made, and I've made the statement that I actually think there's more amps being made today than ever before. It's just maybe each individual company doesn't have the size of the pie that, say, Vox did or Fender did or Marshall did back in the day. But I think just the sheer number of amps, I think there's more being made now. And so there needs to be people out there who know how to repair those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yeah, that's an aspect you can forget about too. It often needs more work, and just the nature of it. You're lugging it around. It's not tucked in a little bag.
Right.
Some people have like a flight case and whatnot, and that's great. But you are right. Like, you hear about recapping or new tubes or biasing and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, if they're gonna make this many, there's this many companies. They're all carving out their own aspect and part of the world. There's going to be people that can repair them, because not everybody's going to be like, oh, I'm going to ship it here, or I live outside of the country where it's made, or whatever it is. I'm not in Britain or in the US,
Yeah, exactly. And, there's a lot of these old amps that are still out there playing gigs. People are still out there playing gigs with their amps from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And, I have an old 70s Super Reverb, 70 specifically. I don't think Fender wants me shipping that to them for repair. Like, there needs to be someone local who can work on that, and local can be wherever you are. There needs to be someone that has a clue how to repair and fix these things. Luckily, I'm lucky. I have 3 or 4 great amp techs within an hour drive of me. So, that's not the situation for everybody.
No, not at all. And I feel like it's one of those things too. It's kind of like most things, like a barber or like a plumber. Like, if you can find a good amp tech that you're really digging, you're gonna keep going to them.
Yep, absolutely. I joke with people that I can count on both hands the number of people that have cut my hair my entire life. Because when I find someone, I stay with that person.
I only had 2.
Yeah, really? See,
Because
when I moved around, I had to find new people in different places. But yeah, and when I was little, my mom just took me to whoever. But That's where a large portion of them, half of them came from just my mom taking me to whoever had a spot open to cut my unruly hair. This podcast is supported in part by Stringjoy Strings. I'm a snob, at least that's what people tell me. I'm never okay with good enough, and that's where Stringjoy Strings come in. They're better than good enough. They're the best. Stringjoy are making some of the finest strings available today right up the road from me in Nashville, Tennessee. They offer custom sets, balanced tension, coated strings, the works. If you need it, they can probably make it happen. You should be using Stringjoy Strings, and if you're going to order from them, you really could help this podcast out by clicking the affiliate link down in the description or show notes below. You get amazing strings, I get a little bit of that back to help the show keep going. It's a win-win situation. Get your Stringjoy Strings today. So I found out, because I don't read magazines or websites as much as I should, given that I do a podcast around this. You wrote an article for Premier Guitar as well recently.
Yeah, so I think I'm going into my 3rd year as a writer for them.
Nice.
I started in 2020, so like right around lockdown. So maybe this is the 4th year going into it. Yeah, it cycles between myself and a couple other people. Barry at Exact Tone has done some articles during my time. Aisha Lowe has done some stuff as well. I've also done some DIY articles about like I modded up plumes to have germanium diodes as opposed to some stock LED ones. So there's that article as well. I have some other ideas that I'll pitch to them at some point, but we've just been so busy. I've been doing my regular articles. But yeah, my most recent article, usually like I'll have them in my phone and then I'm going through them. I'm rifling like a lot of them I've got X'd out because I had done them. And then article month comes up and I go, oh crap, what am I going to do? Because anytime in the shop I have like an argument or a philosophical thing going on, I'm like, you guys, we may have just made my next article.
Right.
And I'll throw it in my notes. So this one is essentially me discussing tap tempo. And essentially kind of like the idea is like, are we lying to ourselves? Is tap tempo right? Can you get it right? Is it worth it? You know, and you said before the episode you had kind of looked through it. What do you think about tap tempo?
So first of all, for the listeners and the YouTube watchers, it is down in the description below and the show notes so that you can follow along, as it were. So the reason I loved this article is because this is a conversation I've had often about the use of tap tempo and the importance of tap tempo, and I'm going to put importance in air quotes. Also, I'm going to give my usual caveat that, y'all, I am a blues and roots player. I have done show choirs, I've done musicals, I've done church gigs, all those kinds of things that are way more plugged in and synced and those kinds of things. And this article talks about some of those concepts. But I think tap tempo is good, but it is never, ever, ever a deal breaker for me for any type of pedal. Modulation, delay, reverb. You see tap tempo occasionally on reverbs now. None of that. It's not important to me. Even in your article, I love you mentioned, and spoiler alert, listeners. You mentioned down it towards the end, you're like, you see a place for it in things like certain tremolos, if like that's a feature of the song at the tempo. Yes, absolutely. I think you mentioned the Smiths. I can't remember the tune.
How soon is now?
Yeah, how soon is now? But I, on the other hand,
that song is the tremolo. You know
exactly.
what I mean? Like that's what that I try to specifically bring up that point because when it's an amplitude thing and it's cutting and boosting and whatnot, like that is the tempo. You know what I mean? And songs can be written around the guitar and songs can be brought to the guitar. You know what I mean? And as you and I had spoke, like it doesn't always have to be on. So
yeah, I like tremolo that's not on it, but I'm using it as a very different tool. It's not this song is built around this pulse. And or especially in delay, you mentioned in the article about sometimes if your delay is spot on the tempo, it loses the fact that you have delay on a little bit because there's a lot of other things happening on downbeats. And I feel like it gets a little buried and a little lost. But anyway, that's where I stand on tap tempo.
I think
And
there's times where, like, how soon is now is the first example I thought for tremolo. And if we're talking about
mhm,
delay, the most, like, it's hard to not talk about the edge. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, the
you have
sound
to.
of that band is off in that, and that's fine. I'm talking about a more broad scope of things, like not allowing yourself to reject something because it doesn't have this thing that you think in your head will be perfect. And I illustrate in the article, like, if the song's in like 120 and you tap in, you're not going to tap 120. You're
You're
not going to get
not.
lucky enough to do it. And even if you are, maybe you did it for 2, but does that processor require 3? And does the processor take the average of the 2 gaps? Does it take just the last 2? And now you're at 120.3?
Hmm.
Is that fine? Are you at 120.35? And now the next one, if you're at 120 in the song and you just tapped in pretty close, you heard it's 121 though. Now the next one, you're off even more, right? It's going to multiple. There's some math here that I'm not smart enough for, but like
Yeah,
each one goes away. And then it's like, okay, so what do we do as a guitarist? Well, we got to keep tapping it in. Are you going to just keep tapping in the whole time? Maybe you are, or you just leave it as is. When you get back to the second verse, tap it in again, things of that nature. And like, also, if you do tap it in and you're playing live and you guys are not on a click or a metronome in ear or
yeah.
whatever, and it's slightly off, but that's the feel of stuff. And music's fine when it's imperfect. It's usually better. And so I kind of go in the article as well about like a studio setting. So maybe the studio is obviously different than a live scenario. And as you mentioned, a lot of times when it's not on is when it might sound more interesting, more musical, and you might actually notice it more. If the delay is not hitting every kick and snare, you might hear that. It might be cool. It might be better. We're obsessed with emulating tape and degraded stuff and all this like artifacts that made stuff imperfect and cool, and now all of a sudden we're trying to like obsessively tap it in.
Yeah, get to that
I
grid as a lot of
Yeah.
engineers talk about.
Yeah, like, so you're saying you want to sit here and be so sterile that you're on the grid, but also the tonality of it, I want it to be a little bit of a wobble. I want some flutter, like, you know what I mean? And that's essentially why it's like, is it worth it? Does it
Yeah.
matter? I did also go into, I try to, oh, that's my bed.
Mm, you're good.
That was weird. So I did mention, that in the article, like, there are elements that can be important, and I'm trying to also like I'm arguing that you don't need it, but I'm also at the same time trying to approach it from like steel manning the argument from the other side.
Yeah.
And like there's stuff, and I had mentioned like the disaster area smart clock, right? Your MIDI thing where you can link everything up. Like, okay, now I got
Mhm.
multiple things that are MIDI and they're clock, and I can turn the dial and get exactly 120 because that's like where we're going in the song. That's fine. Now those two are in it. But is the band in that BPM? Is the other person in there? Are they sunk up with everybody? Is everybody on the same in-ear click thing? And again, like, does it matter? How many songs have we heard with the Phase 90? It didn't matter that it was swirling out of the
Right.
tempo. And that's, again, at the end of the day, if the thing has tap tempo and that makes you play and enjoy it, that's cool. I'm saying, like, don't allow yourself to ignore potentially something cool because it doesn't have that feature that you think's
Yeah.
going to do exactly what you think it's going to do. But I'm going to say, like, it's not I was talking to a friend who's like a beta tester for pretty much every company you can think of in the pedal world,
Hmm.
and he goes, every time I get somebody in my studio that wants to do tap tempo and stuff, because I always do it by the knob because I can get it more precise with the knob, he goes, I'll give you 3 chances with the foot switch, because he'll record it and oh nope, you were off.
Yeah.
Nope, you were off, because you're not gonna be on. And again, um, without getting too much into the weeds of it, like, how is the processor handling it? Is it seeing the make? Is it seeing the break? Is it averaging all of them? Is it a fixed point? Is it a floating point? Like, what's the processor? Because, okay, pedal A has this in it, pedal B has this in it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's gonna work perfectly with it. This one's
Mm.
CV related and this one's MIDI related. This one, boss is normally closed. Most pedals are normally open. Like,
And to
there's
put
so
it
many
in
factors.
even simpler terms for Neanderthal guitar players like myself, Sometimes it's, does it register your tap when the switch begins moving? Does it register your tap when it hits the sensor, the bottom, whatever switch you've got that changes, whatever the bottom is? Or does it register it when you lift off again? Because all of those change the tempo. And back when I was doing church gigs and I would play, I had a Helix rig. We were on a click, and I would set the tempo for the click. And then what I actually ended up finding is that if I'm set to the click, I end up fighting my sound because there's a whole other thing about how many repeats are you using, because that matters too. Like, how long does this delay have to be on time, quote unquote? What I ended up doing was I ended up fighting because I want to play behind the beat just a little bit, even in those scenarios. And so I ended up setting this delay spot on, and then I'm trying to play on, and I almost feel like I'm rushing because I'm playing on top of the beat so hard to get this delay to stay on the beat, that I found if I tap and I get that natural behind the beat that I'm going to get, if that tempo is 120, I'm probably on my most accurate, I'm going to tap in like 119.7, right? I'm going to be a little slow. And that's okay because it sounds great and it gave it character. But I have also played with church and musical musicians who are very much. I had a buddy who played in a worship band who literally all of the keyboards, the drummer, and all of the guitar effects pedals were all MIDI synced together. And the music director controlled the tempo of everyone's everything. I was like, that sounds awful to me. I'm sure it sounded fine, and it's just a style and preference thing, but it drove me crazy. Sometimes I want to be a little ahead of the beat. Sometimes I want to be a little behind the beat. And a tap tempo can be great for that if you're good and you're willing to practice tap tempo. Because I'm here to tell you, guitar players, your time is not as good as you think it is. It's just not.
And that's the thing. If you start the song or come into the song, it can be different. And I don't know. It's become this thing that's like ubiquitous with like, to have a good this, you'd have to have tap because that's what people want to do. And again, I don't necessarily think it's feasible. I even got an email today about somebody that read the article and was asking me if you have something that displays the BPM, right? Say you have a delay pedal that actually displays the BPM. Can you trust that?
Ooh,
that's another good question. I'm like, I don't have the degree to tell you that. I'm going to take it at face value. The people that created something smarter than me, I'd like to. But at the end of the day, too, it's like, play the song. Like, play it. You know what I mean? I like, we were going back when we were saying, like, at the beginning, like, Eric Johnson plugs into your rig. Sounds like Eric Johnson. It's like, is he going to be like, hey, this tap tempo, it's not doing this, and I need, it's like, just play the thing. You know what I mean? Like, it'll probably be close enough, and also a good player like on the fly will be able to change stuff, you know. And if you are that obsessive, that's fine. There's rigs for you like the Edge. There's rigs for full MIDI sync and all that type of stuff. If that's what makes it fun for you, do that, you know. But like I said, don't let it turn you off from other stuff.
Also, just as a really fun aside that I really hope y'all get either agree violently enough or disagree violently enough that you want to just flood the comment section of this YouTube video. I have a buddy of mine who has absolute pitch. And listeners, if you're not familiar with absolute pitch, it is possible to have perfect pitch that is wrong. And I'm going to use that term very loosely. I've known someone in my life whose perfect pitch was not tuned to 440. They were always so and so many hertz away from the note. Like it was they knew their A would be like 437, right? Not 440. Well, this buddy of mine and I have tested this. I know this sounds like complete horseshit. I know, but we tested it because when someone makes this claim, you make them prove it, right? He has absolute pitch to the point that he can hear deviation in hertz and he can recreate pitch to a hertz, which is insane to me. But one of the things he pointed out to me, that in classic recordings, the music pre-auto-tune, right? He said all these wonderful, amazing classic recordings, all of your singers are flat. They're just minutely flat, just the tiniest bit, a hertz or two, and that's where it sounded the sweetest and where it sounded the best, when they weren't 100% on that note like a freaking sine wave, like right? And we can feel that, and yet we push as musicians, and as the industry is going, we are pushing more and more to get to this level of time and pitch perfection. And now we have AI on the other side trying to meet us. Why are we pushing closer to what AI can do? If you want AI to do a perfectly on beat kind of thing, they can do it. But that's where that uncanny valley starts to happen, right? At least to me, that's where we start to see that uncanny valley of it's not quite human. And so I like when things, I'm not asking for someone to be like horrifically off pitch or out of time, but if there's just this tiny bit that makes it real, that makes it, I don't know, breathe. I love listening to old Zeppelin tracks, and there used to be a website, I'm sure it still exists, where you could upload sound samples and it would tell you whether or not something had been time corrected or not, because it judged how often the drummer was on, like how much it deviated in tempo. And you can fake X number percentage of time deviation with some randomization, but this thing had been trained, and this is pre-AI as we know it, and it would determine, oh no, that thing is perfectly on tempo for the entire 3 minutes and 30 seconds of the song. That has been time corrected, because no human is that correct.
Right.
And I don't think we like things that are that correct.
An example I usually go to echo your point, and I used echo perfectly there, by the way.
Pun perfectly intended.
The example that I would go to, as I was mentioning obviously before, like we want this thing perfectly on the grid, but then I want it to be degraded, and not clean type of thing. So the other example I often given is technology and just the way microphones are made, how high end they are, how awesome they are, especially in this day and age. We still love and enjoy hearing lo-fi.
Yes, we do.
You know what I mean? It's like a secondary mic for the singer, and they're doing a lo-fi thing. Or there's a track where it's like the bridge is lo-fi, or whether it's digitally done or through like a harmonica mic or through some type of cool engineering process. It's like, wow, we got to the pinnacle of mic clarity, and now I want it to sound like an old record.
Yep.
That sounds like shit. It's like, so it's like there's still a yearning and a romance for this stuff. So
I saw a reel today that it was this morning while I was getting ready for work, and I can't believe it was this apropos. But it was the engineer who worked with Bob Dylan on so many records, right? And he said he was in the studio and he was mixing this song for Bob Dylan, and Bob Dylan came in and said, "What are you doing?" And the guy said, "I'm just mixing this song, Bob, and, trying to get it better, and give me 10 minutes." He's like, "Better than what?" And he said, let me finish mixing this. 10 minutes. And so Bob leaves. And then he comes back 5 minutes later instead of 10. He's like, "Are you still working on that?" And he's like, "Yeah, just give me like 5 more minutes, I can finish." He said, "You want me to tell you my philosophy on mixing?" And he's like, "Oh, if I could only had 5 more minutes, I could finish this. But okay, sure. You go." And so Bob says, "Here's the deal." He said, "Engineers, you're going to take the bass drum and you're going to turn it up, and then you're going to EQ it, and you're going to do all this stuff, whatever it is you engineers do. And you're going to make it sound amazing and perfect. And then you're going to move on to the snare drum, And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to bring levels up. You're going to mix it. You're going to make it. You're going to EQ it, put whatever on it, and you're going to make it sound amazing. Then you're going to do that on every track. And you're going to do it until everything sounds perfect and amazing except the song.
Mm-hmm.
And the engineer said, he said, yeah, Bob. Okay, whatever. And then Bob left. And then as an experiment, he decided, okay, he took all the EQ off. He took all the sends off, took everything off and put it back to the song, and then just did a little bit to the bass drum, a little bit to the vocal, and then left everything there. And he said, and hit play. And he said it's like a 7-minute song. And he sat there, and about halfway through, he looked at his assistant in the studio. He said, he's right. It sounds amazing. Like when you didn't try to make it perfect, you just let it be. And
yeah,
we're not good at that. We want perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of live by that philosophy for the recordings that I have done. Like, try to do it in pre, that type of thing. Like, and I've often made like an argument too of like, if you record like 5 pieces, let's say one of them is vocal and then 4 other instruments, and then all of those get some type of EQ, possible filtering, this type of stuff. Are we never hearing what they actually sound like?
Yeah.
So it's like, if every record does that, have we never heard what the thing... You went out and bought that guitar with the rosewood back and sides and the Engelmann spruce top and like, instead of Sitka, and then you got 80/20s instead of like 92/8s on your acoustic, and you did it because you didn't want it to be like this, and you made sure to get this, and you did all that stuff, and they recorded it, and they're like, oh man, this guitar sounds good with that really high-end mic. Now, let me get into my DAW, and I'm going to EQ the crap out of it.
Yep.
So are we not hearing your thing?
EQ the crap out of it.
And there's a similar thing too, and I forget if it was specifically from a record. It might have, because I do remember there was an article I was reading. I know that this was for Icky Thump when Jack went to record Icky Thump, and he was saying like, hey, for this record, he was talking to the engineer, and he was like, for this record, I want to do more layers. I want to do more tracks on it. I want to be a little bit more expansive than a traditional White Stripes record is. And the producer's like, heck yeah, let's do that. And then Jack goes, but I don't want any computers on it. He's like, oh crap,
Yes.
So in similar fashion, it may have been when he was over, I want to say that it was at Toe Rag for Elephant. It may have been that record or whatever, but he was saying one of his philosophies too was like, he would get into the studio, he wouldn't touch the amp, and he would just see what he could get out of it. Not obsess over every dial and knob. Just like, this is what it sounds like right now. What can I get out of it? Have it tell you what the song's going to be, And if that's what it was, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm going to get rid of some of this low end and that end. It's like, I agree with you to an extent. Like, you can polish up some edges, some curves and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Or like, oh, I'm getting a weird like reverb thing here that might be because of the room, because we had to record it here. But like, if you change everything, going back to my analogy of like 5 tracks, now change everything. Why did you buy the 16-inch instead of the 14-inch? Why did you get the drum that's 7 versus like, all these things? Like, we actually
why did you spend 2.5 hours of paid studio time EQing your amp if you're just going to absolutely decimate that EQ in post?
Yeah, so and maybe somebody out there has a question, and or has an answer for that, and if they do, please bombard Philip.
No, it's okay. The contact information for Alex is down in the description below. You can bug him too.
Rage baiting.
I know.
Isn't that what you do?
I've been accused of rage baiting on threads, and yes, I say things, and some people find them controversial. I just like the conversation they have that it spurs, and I find that, and this goes back to my like a long held belief that I've talked about on this podcast before, that humans tribalize around things they hate really easily compared to things they love, and so I use not even controversial topics, but I say things as facts that are absolutely not facts, just to get people talking. Have the conversation. Be real. And I guess that's what we're sort of saying in music. Be real with it. I'm not asking you to be sloppy. I'm not asking you to not have good musicianship. absolutely have that. You need that in order to be able to use when it's not perfect. Like, in order for not perfect to sound good, you already need to be real good, right? Like, nobody's asking for Yoko Ono off of the Get Back sessions, which I stopped watching those at that point when she started singing, and I was like, I cannot finish this. No, that's not Yoko Ono hate. That, for what it's worth, that's another controversial topic. It was just in that particular moment I could not listen to that anymore. So we're getting real close to an hour already, and we have another thing we want to hit, and we're going to carry it over to Patreon for sure, listeners. So you Patreon supporters, you're going to get the full rest of this topic and then some other shenanigan over on Patreon. If you're not a Patreon supporter and you want to listen to the rest of this episode, go to patreon.com/40watt podcast. $5 a month, you get all the bonus episodes. There's a lot of bonus content over there now at this point. But so we started talking about this article, Premier Guitar, and then we started talking, it is the summer lull, and it's a real thing, because, people are out doing things, summer vacations, that's where people are spending their money instead of guitar gear, and that's fine. A lot of people are gigging. I know when I gig, I buy less gear. Some people is the opposite, but when I'm busy gigging, I don't buy a lot of gear because I'm too busy gigging.
Using it. Yeah.
Exactly. Too busy using what I have. So that's why I'm trying to pick up the gigging. My wallet can't keep buying gear. But there's also end of the year. We're coming up. We're in August. Man, we're already halfway through August, which is wild to me. We're coming up on Black Fridays in just a few months. Then we've got NAMM in January. We've got I'm headed, like, literally we're recording this next week, I'm headed to Fretboard Summit in Chicago, which is going to be a great time. It's been a great time the last 2 years. If you're there, listeners, hit me up on Instagram. Let me know you're going to be there. But what do you hope we're going to see? Like, we've talked about a few things. Like, everybody's going to do something, right? That's the thing. Everybody does something for Black Friday. I get it. At least 50% of companies are going to put out another freaking black colorway of something they already make. Gag me. Enough's enough, y'all. I can't look at another murdered out pedal board. I really can't. So it's like, okay, tell me you're boring without telling me you're boring. Not everyone, but what do you hope to see in the next few months as we start ramping up people putting out new stuff?
Well, I definitely share the sentiment there, and also understand why people do it, because there's a thing for it. And we had discussed prior to the episode too about, like, I think there's got to be a balance when it's innovation and paying the bills, and they might not always mingle. There's a Venn diagram there somewhere of it. And it's yawn fest for me with, like, here's the black version of our thing, but at the same time, like, if it pays the bills and people enjoy it, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But we're kind of talking about, like, what would we like to see? What would we like to see innovation wise?
What do you want to see?
And maybe it's Black Friday isn't the time for that. Maybe it's more of like a NAMM release, and are we gonna see, like, how long until we see another game changer-esque thing, right? Literally the company name type of right? Like that type of thing. Like, how are we going to see it? I go to also David Ranger's company, right? With, like, the mini bar,
I love his
Igor
stuff.
like that type of stuff. And I'm sure there's more out there too. And I'd love for people to share that stuff with me, and I'm talking past, like, oh, we put a tube in it type of thing, which is fine as well. But, like, and nothing against that. Like, that's cool too. But it also brings up the conversation with this, if the whole arc of it is, like, what would we like to see next? Where are we going to innovate? Because I think people, it's obviously a risk, right? To take
always
that gamble on something that people might not understand, because we're essentially trying to sell the same thing from the 70s and 80s all the time. And it was, somebody once asked Josh, like, why do you guys make, like, so many, like, you just make tube screamers and that type of stuff? And Josh is like, because that's all you guys buy.
That's it.
100%. and that's fair. We just keep wanting to buy rats and stuff like that. And yeah, and I get to the point where like I'm really bored as well. I mean, we've got some traditional stuff that I would never say isn't anything but traditional. You know, we do stuff that we push the envelope, and I can confidently say that too.
Mhm.
Or things that are designed circuit wise that almost nobody in the world has been able to achieve. Mechanical stuff, insides, you know. And I had once, I did a interview for a local company that like a local news place was doing like a made in Massachusetts thing, right? So
Yeah.
they want to do small companies. And I had mentioned, and this was like in 2018 or whatever, and essentially I had talked in that interview about like for a company nowadays, and this was 5 years ago, like if you're going to come out of the gate because it's so saturated in our market, especially when it's stuff that's more easy to achieve, let's say fuzz drives, stuff like that,
Yeah.
you go up the pyramid where it's like loopers, delays, octaves, stuff like that, that's harder, right? There's so many companies out there, and that's fine, but it's very saturated market. Like the best chance I think a lot of people have coming out of the gate is pushing the envelope or the boundaries from an internal point of view
Mhm.
and or external point of view. You know what I mean? So if you could push it from an external point of view, let's say like your Game Changer, your David Ranger, I would put our stuff in there like a
Mhm.
triple graph, telegraph, stuff of those natures. That's awesome. Or internally, let's say you're doing like a Strymon, Maris, Chase Bliss, that type
Right.
of stuff. Like, can you do those type of things? Like, if you can do both, that's great. But like, can you achieve that, but also not alienate? That's another weird part of that Venn diagram of like, Chase Bliss innovates every single thing. Most people can't understand what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
It's too much. And they make a thing for a certain group of people. That's great. They're really good at doing it. They're so good at it. But it also turns a lot of people off. So there's a very weird balance of this third Venn diagram. Um, what I'd like to see, I don't know. I think because we live in the world of like, we're generally known for like telegraph or putting keys on things. Like, I'd love to see more hardware aesthetics. You know what I mean? Also, I didn't even mention like our pickguard stuff, right? Like the
Yeah.
Strategy Broadway, where it looks like Fender guitars. Like, you
Of
probably.
everything y'all make, I know the triple graph because we've talked so much about the story, and I have a triple graph and I adore it.
Mhm,
And the Morse code keys, that's so unique. But I really feel like what y'all did with the pickguard style pedal enclosures, that is, you took something people are very familiar with in boost and drive circuits, and you
mhm,
put them into this really neat, aesthetically fun enclosure and just made it
mhm.
different. It stood out.
It's familiar yet fresh, I
Yeah.
feel like. You know, for the listener or viewer, it's like it's that thing that looks like a cutout of a Strat or a Telly. You've probably seen it like on Reddit or somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
It
and
looks
like,
like a
yeah,
cake slice of a Strat or a Telecaster almost.
exactly. Like, here's the thing though, like Broadway in this scenario, that's PNP germanium treble booster,
Mhm.
classic like thing that's been around a long time. But we pushed the envelope on the outside. We made it new, fresh, familiar, accessible, and like it's not just a knob on a rectangle,
Right.
So that aspect is like I'd love to see people push the element that way, you know. That's what I think I'd love to see coming out. Um, like I said, your game changers, your David Ranger, that type of stuff. Those are really cool, I like to see that type of stuff, and we want to do more of it here. But there's definitely also got to be a balance of like, again, we live in a very traditional niche market of a niche market.
Yeah.
So it's like people want drive stuff, they want fuzzes, they want the new thing, they want some point to point stuff, you know. I think um Reeves Electro does a good job at like
Yeah.
doing some like just disgusting guts, like that type of work. You know what I
It's
mean?
insane. The work Marcus does is absolutely, it's mind blowing.
Hmm.
To put them together the way he does, like my brain can barely wrap around things like the DIY, but then to say, oh, I'm also gonna not put these on any kind of board and just connect them all to each other, and it's gonna look like fucking art. I think we're
Mm-hmm.
an hour in. I can cuss. That's my first one this episode. I'm doing pretty good. Um, it's that's my first F bomb. I did say other words earlier, but yeah, you gotta have something unique. If you're gonna do a traditional circuit, your presentation better be unique. If you're
Sure.
gonna do something brand new in the effects realm, I had the guys from Maris on the podcast recently,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like
They're great.
everything they do is fresh and like a
Yeah.
new approach on it. But what did they do? They put it in, especially before the LVX and the Mercury X came out. Y'all, I'm pointing to, I have them on my board over here with the triple graph. But they put them in slightly different enclosures, but they were still really, really familiar looking enclosures.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't go crazy there. It's like the circuit itself is already wild enough. Let's start and give you something familiar with something new. And I
Yeah.
think there needs to be more people pushing those boundaries that way. Take a familiar enclosure or a familiar format and do something new with it.
Mm-hmm. That, going back to what I was saying, like nothing new internally, but the outside, I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
Or, wow, this doesn't exist anywhere in this type of effect or whatever it is.
Mhm.
You can keep the box traditional, but now all of a sudden it's like this thing doesn't like, you know. I think of our buddy John at Electronic Audio Experiments just did the
Yeah.
prismatic wall. I mean,
Yes.
he's modest enough to be like, this has been around for a long time. Sympathetic resonators, but like nobody was putting it in a pedal. Like that's the type of stuff like I'd want to see. And actually going back to the DIY thing too, briefly, I don't like to use us as a continuing example, but
Yeah.
our sub boxes didn't exist.
Yeah, they
Substitution
don't.
boxes did exist, but you didn't get one for transistors and FETs and ceramics and electrolytics and diode clipping pair. Like, again, like that's a pretty like it seems under the radar, but like that's progress there on like innovating and doing something that doesn't really exist. Like that's maybe all it has to be,
Yeah. I
And I think
love
that'll
that.
happen because people want to. I've always said this, like people have like been concerned about like, oh yeah, you're giving away secrets or how to do stuff or whatever. But at the end of the day, the person that's learning from our thing, they don't want to just do the same thing everybody else does. They want to
Yep.
carve out their own piece. So it's like I'll show them everything, but it's like they don't want to like copy our color and layout and format and all that type of stuff. They want their own thing. They want their own identity.
And
And
then there's people like me who I just want to do it because I think it's fun and interesting. But
mhm.
the idea of building my own pedals, ordering my own circuit boards, like as like a fun one-off project, sure, that might be fun one or two times. But I don't want to get into business of building pedals and further saturating the market. I have a couple of ideas that I want to put together and see if they work, and they're probably going to just be trashed, but they're just for my edification because I like learning new things. And I think probably the majority of the people buying your DIY stuff are in the same boat. They just like learning new things and learning how all this works. But 80% of the people who buy the stuff aren't going to go start a pedal company.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
arbitrary number is arbitrary.
I'm sure there's a ton of examples I can think of, but even Chris Benson, when he did his germanium fuzz where it was like temperature controlled,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was 100% ideal for everything from some of the feedback I've heard for a lot of players, but like that aspect of like a thing that's been an issue since the 60s, like there's an innovation thing right there.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of stuff,
It took 60 years for someone to try to deal with it. That wasn't just using silicon,
Yeah. Like he even chose specific colors for the outside for people to play outside to have less absorption of like heat and stuff. Like that type of stuff. Like you see that and you're like, that's different. It's not just here's 3 knobs. Oh, the pedal is green, and you know where I'm going with that. And like, there's always a
It's an
market for that
ODR1.
stuff.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, there's always a market for that stuff, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
I think if the topic here that we're talking about is like, what would we like to see? For
Yeah.
Black Friday, it might be pretty safe. It might be, conservative. Who knows, depending on where the economy's been. But like, for like immediate future innovations, I'd love to see that type of stuff. And again, we've kept the scope very narrow here for pedals.
Mhm.
Like I think of like let's bring it out to guitars. I think of like Andy Powers' work with like new bracing and like the Taylor stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that type of stuff. Like I love what he does and like innovates in certain ways. Like there's other markets like guitar speakers and cabs and like the way they're doing processes, and it's all out there. And again, we kept the scope very focused here for pedals just because it's a
Sure.
natural conversation. But like there is that stuff out there, and we'd love to see it because I feel like people talk about it more when it's something, people share it online. They talk to their friends about it, like, hey, did you see the new this? Blah, blah, blah. Or it's like, it was when we came out with the first Telegraph. I put a prototype on Instagram. I was like, uh, said nothing special here. It's just like a kill switch, but it looks pretty cool. And it's just
Yeah.
like that was the trajectory that never stopped, because it's like I know what that thing is. Kill switch is the most basic thing ever,
Yeah.
but it's never looked like this. What's going on here? You know what I mean? It's
Like
just like,
it's so natural to have a kill switch that I was doing it with Gibson guitars because you have two volumes and a three-way switch. I would do it by just turning the volume down on one pickup and using the three-way switch long
mhm,
before I ever knew that there were people who would put in like video game buttons on their guitars and stuff like that
mhm.
to have kill switches. But to have it
Yeah,
in this format, that was new.
yeah. I wouldn't boil it down to this, but it's essentially like it could be. You could just call it a conversation starter alone, or like that looks so cool. I don't. We've done a few things here that take it for what it is, but we get a lot of like, I don't even care what that does. I want it type of
Yeah,
thing, and like that's a you don't really hear that with like a one knob boost style pedal thing, you know what I mean?
right.
Because the cloud of that thing is how good it sounds and feels and inspires the
Mhm.
player. You can't see a picture of it and go, I need to have that thing
I love when I
as
see a
easily.
product that just looks that cool and unique that I'm like, I don't know what it does, but I'm buying it because I want. A buddy of mine, Eric Brania over at Brania Effects, he likes to use really unique enclosures. Um, and he just builds germanium based fuzzes, boosts, and overdrives for the most part. He's got a few other things.
Hmm.
Um, but the first one I ever saw was just a color sound one knob fuzz, and I've got a video over on the YouTube channel. Y'all can look it up so you can see it. But they're in like the coolest enclosure I've ever seen, and it's old school, like a mechanical knob that looks like it's got the dashes around it, like it's a dial on like an old school '60s style. I don't know, some big piece of machinery, and it just looked so cool. I was like, I have to have that. I
Hmm.
And it's still one of the coolest fuzzes I own. So
Hmm. That type of stuff is awesome, and I'd love to see people pushing that. Like I said, it doesn't have to be anything crazy internally. Push the
yeah.
boundaries aesthetically, because here's the thing. I would say that's more attainable for somebody coming up. It's like,
Hmm.
let me source some toggle switches that look like nothing else. Let me source some cool knobs. Let me do a different type of paint job or a cool acid etch or whatever it is. You
Hmm.
can build a traditional circuit till the cows come home, but it's like this thing carved out your piece of the pie. That could be an innovation in its own.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be like the game changer Bigsby pedal or the light or like those things. Those are awesome. I think we need more of those. Um, it can be hard for people to like afford them a lot of times because technology could be newer, or it's a very mechanically driven thing. And we've learned that like hardware and triple graph alone costs $60
Right.
to do. You know what I mean? So it's like that thing can cost a lot in startup and whatnot. And that's where we talk about the risk, the reward, the ROI. But
Hmm.
the reward is better when you have the risk and you persevere through it. Um, so that's the type of thing I'd love to see like innovated.
Yeah.
And I guess if we go back to the Black Friday, yeah, it's a yawn fest for me if it's an all black pedal. And
Yeah, it's fine.
like uh like that, if that's what people like, that's fine. But I'd love to see like more small batch stuff, or because Black Friday doesn't feel like as much of a breeding ground for new as it feels
Yeah,
for like alternatives or different skins or different schemes and colorways and
right.
like
That's what it
limited
feels like.
batches.
I want
Like
to see do a and so I bought recently the Keeley oh, it's over here somewhere. The Halo Core, which
Mhm.
is like it's like the stripped down version of the Halo, which is funny because it came in a much larger enclosure and it had these really unique knobs. Y'all, if you haven't paid attention
Oh
to the
yeah, I
knobs
know
that were
the
on that
yep,
pedal, look it up.
yeah.
That's the kind of thing I would love to see as a Black Friday thing. It's like, oh look,
Mm-hmm.
we're releasing this like take on this thing we already do, but it's different.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar, but it's not the same. Hey, we're only doing it for this day. And it's not just a different colorway. It's not just a skin. It's not,
Mm.
we're not going down the microtransaction video game route where we just give you a new outfit for your character.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a unique thing that we're putting out there into the space that's going to drive a lot of people crazy. They hate the limited releases. I think they're
Mm-hmm.
fun. You don't have to collect them all, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
You don't.
Yeah. You don't know. It's funny. You're actually kind of describing our Fusion series. Did we talk about this, Philip?
Yeah,
Are
we
you
talked about it on the last
right?
podcast
Like where
that
it's
you were
like
on.
the idea is like, what if our staple product was like this? You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like, like that's why we did like, what if Foxcatcher had germanium and MOSFET clipping instead? And we put out like a Fusion, like, and we might try to do one for Black Friday this year. We actually already have something in the works, so listeners keep an eye out for around the end of the year. This is our 10-year anniversary, so we're going to try to do. It just happens to be like Black Friday, Christmas time, holiday time. Like that's a good time for it. Celebrate the end of the year, 10-year anniversary. And maybe we'll have more of that stuff. But I love that
Yeah.
like small batch take on stuff. Like especially like there's a lot of stuff we were talking like, and you were actually I think talking to Mark on the last episode about it, like the germanium's only going to be so good even if you can get a hold of it for so long.
Yeah.
Like you're going to want to like do something with it. So it's like, why not have something cool, put that into the world, give that part that was sitting in a closet some life, you know what I mean? And create a small batch. And I get it that there's a whole research development, there's the breadboarding, there's the press release, there's the website, like there's so much behind it, but like having it have its own life and whatnot and celebrate like an anniversary or like a Black Friday limited thing. People love that stuff,
I
It
think
doesn't
that's
have
so
to
good.
just be black pedal of like,
Yeah.
oh, here's the same thing, but it's black. And I get it. That's an easier thing. It's attainable and it makes sense from a standpoint from like a lot of financial avenues, but like maybe we can do both.
Yeah. I think you can do both. So as a last thing before we head over to Patreon, I'm just curious, as we are getting close, are you going to go to NAMM this year? In
We
January?
don't have our sights on it, just because we've been focusing so much on new products and putting the money into that.
Yeah.
With new DIY stuff, new, so essentially like it's multiple outfits here. Like we wear the CSP hat, the DIY hat, and the third man hat. So like we've got those and we have new products and some new lines that we're going to be doing, and we want to put the time into that instead of traveling for stuff. I personally like the Nashville one more anyway, but that's
Yeah, I know.
nothing again. I mean, it's whatever. But we've got some stuff that's been cooking, and we want to do that. We want to do DIY, new series of stuff, and just keep while the iron's hot with that type of stuff. We also have another collaboration like in the works that we need. Like that's a fourth hat that we wear. So like,
Yeah.
we got to get all these things done because this place is just never like void of ideas and like cool things and collaborations. Like it feels like every month, every week we have a new thing, like a new artist reaching out or a new this or a new that. Like just because this world's opened up so many doors for us, like it's so crazy and surreal to be like backstage with huge bands, doing the Jack White thing alone. Hopefully by the end of the year we have something with Jack coming out or involved with Jack, I should say. Just because we're always doing stuff with them if we can. But yeah, I don't think NAMM is necessarily in our scope for those reasons. We've done it a lot. We from 2016 when we first went through 2019, we did it twice a year. We did a lot of NAMM. It was fine for us. Right now, it doesn't make sense for us. I know that it is feel like it's coming back strong again, which is cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm for it. It doesn't make sense for us right now. So that's just where it is. I'd love to do a Nashville show again, just because the nature of being there with Third Man. Nashville itself is cooler. Anybody can
I
argue
just
me
love
like
Nashville. I love that city.
Seeing friends and stuff there, So we've got more YouTube stuff that we're doing. We've started recording for. We have a new building that we're working on. Like, there's too much stuff to really worry about, like doing NAMM.
Yeah,
It would
because
be
it's a
fun to
lot.
go.
It's a lot. Even if you go small for NAMM, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make sense for us, but I think everybody should go. It's really fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be there. Once again, listeners, if you're going to go to NAMM, let me know. Hit me up, and we'll make it work. I think that's going to call us up to time, though. We actually ran a little long, so we're going to go over to Patreon and continue chatting about cool and fun and wonderful things that we're finding. In the meantime, y'all know Alex. All the links are down in the description below. Website, YouTube, Instagram, all those things. I'm going to link that article so you can read it and you can decide for yourself if tap tempo is a deal breaker for you on a pedal. I don't think it should be, but that's just me. Alex, any parting thoughts before we head over to Patreon?
Yeah, like I said, don't let no tap tempo discourage you, that type of thing. Just try stuff out. We'd love for any of the listeners that haven't really checked our stuff out, go check it out. Check it out on the socials. If you ever thought about tinkering like Philip has, he got some stuff and really likes it. I think most people have that same experience. And if you don't like it, you tried it out for like a kit is like 60-70 bucks. Like try it out for that. Just give it to yourself. Anybody that's listening to the show too, if you want to order something after hearing the show, leave us like a comment or whatever as well. It's like 40-watt podcast, throw something free in there or whatnot. Like I'll throw some stuff in there. Maybe it's a little extra, zhuzh it up, if you will.
There you go.
And just something fun for like, I'd love to know, like, people listen to the show, they enjoy it, they want to get something as well. Like, we'd love throwing in little trinkets and whatnot just to really get people excited.
Yeah, I love that. And in a worst case scenario, you try it, you don't dig it, you put the stuff back in a bag and in the box, and you gift it to somebody who is into this kind of thing.
100%. Maybe a friend, a cousin, a relative, something like that. Like, give it to them. You know what I mean? Like, or mail it to somebody. Like,
absolutely.
Hey, it wasn't for me, but I like gear, which means my friends probably like gear. Maybe they want to try it. Give it to them.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go over to Patreon. Listeners, thanks for hanging out. Watchers on YouTube, thanks for hanging out. Remember to leave a review on wherever you listen to your podcast. Click the subscribe subscribe button and the bell icon. Leave a comment on YouTube. It helps a ton. I really appreciate it. And until we chat again, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.